Hi friends, I'm here in South Carolina, Hilton Head Island in the salt marshes. And the reason why the saltwater marsh is an important place is because it's the birthplace of a lot of baby animals, sea animals, birds, a lot of critters live in here. And while we were kayaking, we were able to see baby dolphins, baby manatees, and even a spoonbill, which is a rare bird coming from South America. And the reason why I mentioned this bird is because I have a book about this bird. It's called When Agnes Caws, and it's a perfect book to read about how different animals get their sounds and make their sounds and how they get used to the area where they live. So come closer and read with me.
The slender, snowy egret uses its feet to stir up small aquatic animals hiding in sand that it then eats. Its beautiful feathers used to be all the rage in the fashion industry, endangering the species. Early conservationists rallied together to protect egrets in the early 20th century, and this species is once again a common sight in shallow coastal wetlands.
Agnes Peregrine, daughter of a well-known ornithologist, Professor Octavia Peregrine, was a real bird brain. At the age of 3, Agnes could do the courtship dance of the blue-footed booby. At the age of 5, she could imitate the flight of the yellow-bellied sapsucker. But it wasn't until Agnes was 8 that her greatest skill was revealed. 2 days into a bird-watching trip to Borneo, a shriek pierced the jungle air. Kawak, kaweek, eek, eek, eek. Agnes's mother, Professor Peregrine, whipped out her binoculars. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "It was the call of the golden-fronted leaf bird." "You mean this?" asked Agnes. "Kawak, kaweek, eek, eek, eek." Out of thin air, a flock of leaf birds flitted to the ground. "Why, Agnes," declared her mother, "you have a true talent for bird calling." "I do," whooped Agnes. "I really do." Agnes practiced her skill wherever she went. On the African savanna, she called the great hornbill, "Pee-up, pee-up, pee-pee-o." In the great forest of New Guinea, she called the sulfur-crested cockatoo, "Chaka-chaka, wick-wick-wick." And deep in the swampy Everglades, she called the sharp-beaked snake bird, "Cheplup, cheplup, cheplup." In the New York City Central Park, she called the ruby-throated hummingbird, "Mm." Agnes's talent made bird watching easy. It also made news. Reporters, photographers, nature lovers all went a Twitter over the little girl. But the greatest honor came from the World Bird Society. Its members voted to send the Peregrines in search of the rarest, most elusive bird of all, the pink-headed duck.
Pink-headed duck is a large diving duck that was once found in parts of the North Indian Plains, Bangladesh, and in the riverine swamps of Myanmar. The last confirmed sighting was from Darbhanga in June 1935, but since then have been thought of as extinct since 1950s. Numerous searches have failed to provide any proof of continued existence.
"Spotting that duck will be a challenge," Professor Peregrine explained. "It hasn't been seen in decades." "I bet I can call it," said Agnes, "and I bet it will come." "There's only one problem," admitted her mother. "No one knows what the pink-headed duck sounds like." "Then I better get whacking," replied Agnes, and she warbled around duck calls. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, Colonel Edwin Pitsnap, avid bird collector, sat in his country manor house. All around him were the spoils of his many hunts. Grouse were mounted above the mantel. Pheasants under glass served as end tables. Every nook and cranny was crammed with dead birds. And Pitsnap craved still more. Now the colonel opened his newspaper and read about the peregrines. "A pink-headed duck," he hissed. "I've so longed to get my hands on one of those. But how? A crooked idea came to him. "It's deliciously crafty," he cackled. "It's superbly cunning. It's sure to work." And rubbing his hands over his dastardly plan, he hurried to pack. The peregrines also packed, and then they set off on their trek, by ship, by train, by yak, until at last they reached the far-off slopes of the Himalayan mountains, home of the rare pink-headed duck. As soon as they pitched camp, Agnes started calling. Little did she know that cleverly hidden on a nearby slope, Colonel Pitsnap watched and waited. Day after disappointing day, Agnes called. Dozens of birds answered, but alas, not one pink-headed duck. "This is for the birds," Agnes hollered. Fed up, and she kicked a sharp rock. "Ouch, ow, ouch, ow! Oh, drat!" she cried, rubbing her stubbed foot. "Ouch, ow, ouch, ow! Clack, clack!" The peregrines looked up. Overhead flew the rare, the elusive, pink-headed duck. The little duck flapped to the ground. "Wow," whispered mother and daughter. "Now," whispered Colonel Pitsnap. He reached for his net. Swoosh! "Ouch, ow!" cried the duck. "At last," crowed Colonel Pitsnap. He darted away with his catch. The peregrines were stunned. "Where did he come from?" Agnes asked. "No idea," said her mother. "Hey!" Agnes yelled. "That's my duck!" And she charged after him. "Agnes!" cried her mother. She charged after her daughter. It wasn't long before Agnes found herself on a distant slope, closing in on Colonel Pitsnap. Boldly she stepped into view. "Hand over that duck," she demanded. Colonel Pitsnap jumped. He smiled a fake smile. "My, what a surprise," he said in an oily voice. "I came to capture the pink-headed duck, and by chance caught the golden-throated bird caller too." The colonel threw back his head and laughed wickedly. Then, staring hard at Agnes, he demanded, "Call some birds from my collection." "I won't," cried Agnes. "You can't make me." Colonel Pitsnap's nostrils flared. "I have ways of making you squawk," he hissed, and he took a step forward toward the small girl. By the look on his face, Agnes knew he meant business. There was only one thing to do. "Caw, squawk, cheep, chirp, chakalaka-woo, heap, whip, hoot, quack, cock-a-doodle-doo, twitter-tee, chup-chup-chup, wick-wick-wick, ka-wick, gobble-gobble, out-out, beep-ee-oh, beep-wee," she cried in a wing's beat, and from all corners of the world. The birds replied, hundreds and hundreds of them. They rose from their roosts. They soared through the sky, and with a cacophony of angry cries, they surrounded the colonel. "You little fool!" screamed Pitsnap. "You called too many!" He swiped at the feathered air, but the birds refused to leave. Grouse buzzed him. Pheasants bombarded him. Around and around the birds swirled, nipping, poking, pecking, scolding. Around and around jumped Colonel Pitsnap, weaving, swatting, crouching, dodging, and watching it all was Agnes. Suddenly, into the fray came Professor Peregrine. "Agnes," she cried, "what happened?" "He asked me to call the birds," answered Agnes. "So I did." At that moment, the bird-pecked colonel let out a tremendous "Ah!" and made a mad dash down the mountain. The birds swarmed after him. Professor Peregrine turned to Agnes. "Well done," she praised. "Thanks, Ma," said Agnes, "but the birds really did it." Gently, they untangled the pink-headed duck from the net. "Clack," said the duck, ruffling its feathers. "Clack," said Agnes. Then, padding on webbed feet to reach flying speed, the pink-headed duck took to the air and winged its way over the horizon. "Wow," said Agnes. I hope you enjoyed this book, and watch some more videos of ours where we read great stories in great places. See ya!